What if the one night you thought would end your life became the night that made it worth living? Rain poured down like glass, shattering from the heavens, each drop cold against Ilara's trembling skin as she walked alone through the deserted streets of Ravenshade. Midnight wrapped the town in shadows, and the dim streetlights flickered weakly as if afraid of the darkness pressing against them. Ilara didn't care where she was going anymore. She had walked for hours, her shoes soaked, her dress clinging to her as if begging her to stop. But she couldn't. She couldn't stop moving, not when stopping meant feeling again. Her life had turned into a quiet ache that refused to fade. The people she had trusted most had turned away when she needed them, and the love she thought would last forever had ended in betrayal that cut deeper than any knife. Her mother was gone, her friends had moved on, and she had nothing left but memories that hurt too much to keep. So she walked into the storm, hoping that maybe, just maybe, it would wash her away. The old forest at the edge of town loomed before her, its trees like black silhouettes reaching up to claw at the sky. Every story she'd ever heard warned her to stay away. They said no one who went in after dark ever came back the same. But that was exactly what she wanted, to never come back. Her heartbeat was the only sound that followed her into the mist, faint and uncertain. The air grew colder, heavier, until every breath burned in her lungs. She didn't notice the whisper at first. It came soft and low, like the voice of the rain itself. "You shouldn't be here," Ilara froze. Her eyes darted through the shadows, but she saw nothing. Then a shape moved, a figure stepping out from between the trees, tall and impossibly graceful. The man wore a long black coat, the fabric glistening faintly under the weak light of the moon. His skin was pale, smooth like marble, and his eyes glowed a deep, unnatural crimson. He looked like something pulled from a dream or a nightmare. Her breath caught. "Who are you?" He tilted his head, studying her like a curious predator. "Someone who doesn't belong in your world," he said quietly. "And neither do you." She should have been afraid. Every instinct told her to run, but fear felt distant, like something she had forgotten how to feel. "Then maybe we belong in the same place," she said, her voice breaking. "Because I don't belong anywhere anymore." He stepped closer, his boots silent on the wet ground. "You don't know what you're saying." "I do," she said. "I'm tired. I want this night to be the last one." His red eyes flickered, a flash of something like pity or hunger. "Humans always say that," he murmured. "They think they're ready for death, but when it stands before them, they beg to live again." "Then let me be different," she whispered. He reached out slowly, his cold fingers brushing her chin, lifting her face until she met his gaze. The world around them seemed to vanish, the forest fading into shadow and silence. "You're not afraid?" he asked softly. "No," she said. "There's nothing left to fear." He studied her a moment longer, as if searching her soul. "You're broken," he said finally. "But there's something beautiful in that. Something familiar." Her lips trembled. "Then end it," she whispered. "If you're going to kill me, do it." He smiled faintly, sadly. "Death is too simple," he said. "I could offer you something more." "What do you mean?" "Freedom," he said, his voice barely audible over the wind. "Not life, not death. A night that never ends, where you can forget everything that hurt you. But once you choose it, you can never go back." Ilara's heart pounded. She didn't understand his words, but something about them pulled her closer, as if his voice was a thread wrapped around her soul. "Why me?" He looked away for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Because you called me," he said. "With your sorrow, your despair, the night listens to hearts like yours." The rain had stopped, but the world still glistened wet around them. A fog rolled through the forest, curling around their feet. When Ilara blinked, he was gone. Only his voice lingered, soft and deep. "If you truly wish to leave your life behind, meet me at the old chapel before dawn." The sound faded, leaving her alone. She didn't move for a long time, her thoughts a storm louder than the rain had been. Maybe she had gone mad. Maybe grief had finally broken her. But part of her, a quiet, desperate part, believed him. As the night deepened, she found herself walking again, her steps slow but certain. The chapel stood on a hill at the far edge of town, abandoned for decades. Its roof had caved in, and its walls were cracked, but the old bell tower still pointed toward the stars. When she reached the door, it creaked open on its own. Candles burned inside, hundreds of them, though she didn't know who had lit them. Their light flickered across the walls, casting shadows that danced like ghosts. And there he was, sitting on a stone bench at the front, his head bowed slightly as if he'd been waiting. "You came," he said, not looking up. "I did," she whispered. "I don't even know why." "Because you meant what you said," he replied. "And people who mean it always find their way here." She took a few steps forward. "What happens now?" He lifted his gaze to hers, and for the first time she saw something human in those red eyes, loneliness, deep and endless. "Now you choose," he said. "Do you wish to end your pain, or begin something new?" Elara hesitated, her heart trembling between fear and surrender. "You said once this night begins, it never ends the same way." "What did you mean?" He stood, walking toward her until the distance between them vanished. "The moment you let go of who you were, the world will forget you," he said softly. "You'll be free, but not alive. And you'll never see the sun again." Her breath caught. "Then it really is forever." "Yes," he said, "but forever can be beautiful if you stop running from yourself." The wind howled through the broken windows, scattering candlelight across the floor. Elara felt her resolve breaking. All her life, she had searched for something, love, peace, meaning, and found only disappointment. Maybe this was what she had been waiting for, a chance to stop feeling the weight of it all. "I don't want it to end," she whispered. Lucien, the name slipped from his lips like a sigh, reached for her hand, his touch cold but gentle. "Then it won't," he said. The candles flickered violently, their flames twisting into spirals of red and silver. The air trembled, and for one heartbeat, Elara felt herself fade, her pain, her memories, her name all dissolving into the dark. And when the first light of dawn touched the horizon, there was no trace of her in the world she had left behind. Only a whisper lingered in the wind. The girl who left life for one night with a vampire. Elara woke to darkness, but it wasn't the kind that swallowed everything. This darkness moved, breathed, shimmered faintly with traces of candlelight that floated in the air like dying stars. The ground beneath her felt like marble, smooth and cold, and the air was heavy with a scent she couldn't name, something like roses, dust, and the faint trace of iron. When she opened her eyes fully, she realized she wasn't in the chapel anymore. The broken walls, the candles, the rain, all of it was gone. In their place stood a vast hall, ancient and silent, carved from stone that pulsed faintly as if alive. Lucien stood near a tall window, his back turned to her, watching the moon sink into the horizon. His black coat seemed to merge with the shadows, his posture still, almost statue-like. He didn't move until she whispered, "Where am I?" "You came," he said quietly, not turning around. His voice echoed softly off the walls. "I did," she said, "but I don't know what happened. One moment I was standing in the chapel, and now—" She trailed off, touching her chest. Her heartbeat was faint, almost non-existent, like a sound heard through water. "What did you do to me?" Lucien turned then, his crimson eyes softer than before. "I didn't do anything you didn't ask for," he said. "You crossed a threshold. You left your world behind." Elara rose to her feet, unsteady. The floor reflected her faintly, but when she leaned closer, the reflection didn't move the same way she did. It was slower, delayed, as if the mirror world no longer recognized her as one of its own. "Am I dead?" she asked. "No," Lucien said. "Not exactly." She swallowed hard. "Then what am I?" He took a slow step toward her. "You're still Elara," he said softly. "But you've shed what kept you human. The fear, the hunger, the pain, you've left those behind." She shook her head. "I don't understand." "Everything feels different, cold, quiet." He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the faint blue veins beneath his pale skin. "That's what it means to live in the night," he said. "You're not bound by the same things anymore. You don't belong to time. You belong to the dark." She looked around. The hall stretched endlessly, filled with arches and corridors that vanished into shadows. There were doors that led nowhere, and staircases that wound up into darkness. "Is this where you live?" Lucian nodded slightly. "Where we all live, between the heartbeat of one world and the silence of another." Something inside her stirred, a strange mixture of awe and grief. She wanted to feel safe, to feel reborn, but all she felt was the absence of everything she used to be. "You said this would be freedom," she said. "Why does it feel like a cage?" Lucian's expression darkened just for a moment. "Freedom is never what we imagine it to be," he said. "You wanted to be free from pain, but to escape pain, you had to let go of everything that could ever give you joy. You can't have one without the other." "Longer than I care to remember," she glanced back at him. "Then why stay? Why not end it?" Lucien gave a small, bitter smile. "Because death doesn't come for us. Once you've chosen the night, eternity becomes your shadow. You can run from it, but you'll never outpace it." Elara wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling the weight of forever pressing down on her. "So this is what I chose," she murmured. "To never see the sun again, to never feel warmth. You chose peace," he said. But peace and emptiness often look the same. For hours, or maybe days, she couldn't tell, Lucian guided her through the world he lived in. They walked through halls of silent mirrors, across bridges made of mist, and down corridors where every sound vanished before it could echo. She saw other figures too, pale, graceful, silent, moving like shadows that had forgotten their names. None of them spoke to her. They looked at her with curiosity, perhaps pity, then disappeared again into the dark. One evening, or what passed for evening there, Lucien led her to a garden that bloomed under moonlight. Flowers glowed faintly, their petals translucent. The air was cool and still, and the sky above was filled with stars so close they seemed almost touchable. Elara sat by a fountain, watching her reflection tremble in the water. This time, it didn't vanish. It stared back pale and unfamiliar, her eyes now a shade of silver blue. "You said I left my life behind," she whispered. "But what if I want it back?" Lucien's expression softened. "You can't return to a world that's already forgotten you," he said. "The moment you crossed into this one, time stopped remembering your name." Tears welled in her eyes, but they didn't fall. Her body didn't allow it anymore. "You didn't tell me that part," she said, her voice trembling. "You wouldn't have listened," he replied gently. "You were ready to disappear." She turned on him, anger flaring for the first time since she had arrived. "You used me," she said. "You needed someone to ease your own loneliness." Lucian didn't deny it. He looked away, his face shadowed by guilt. "Perhaps I did," he said softly. "You reminded me of what I lost, the feeling of wanting to live, even when it hurts," her voice broke. "You call this living?" "It's surviving," he said. "Sometimes that's all we have." Silence filled the garden again, broken only by the faint sound of water rippling. Elara stared at her reflection one more time, feeling the ache of realization settling deep within her. She wasn't dead, but she wasn't alive either. She existed somewhere in between, a soul caught in a beautiful, endless night. Lucien stepped closer. "You can still make this life your own," he said quietly. "You can find meaning in the dark if you choose to." She looked up at him, her voice softer now. "And what about you? Have you found meaning?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "Not yet," he said. "But perhaps one day." For the first time, she saw something fragile in him, something human that had survived centuries of solitude. She didn't forgive him, not entirely, but she understood him. He had been alone too long, wandering through eternity with no one to remind him what it meant to feel, and maybe, in some twisted way, she was meant to be that reminder. Lucien offered her his hand. She took it. His skin was cold, but it no longer felt foreign. Together, they stood beneath the stars that never rose and never set. The night around them hummed with quiet power, a world without beginning or end. Elara finally spoke, her voice steady now. "Maybe forever doesn't have to be empty," she said. "Maybe it can still mean something, even here." Lucian looked at her, a faint smile ghosting his lips. "Maybe," he said. if you let it. And as they stood there, surrounded by a sky that never saw dawn, Ilara realized something she hadn't understood before. She hadn't found death in the arms of a vampire. She had found a different kind of life, one that forced her to confront everything she'd tried to escape. The night had taken her, yes. But in its quiet, eternal embrace, it had given her something the world never did, a reason to exist, even without light. We all carry nights that feel endless, moments where leaving feels easier than living. But somewhere, in the darkness, something or someone reminds us that even the broken can still glow. Ilara left her life for one night with a vampire, and found in that eternal night the truth she could never find in daylight, that sometimes the end is only the beginning.